Pace has dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's April 7th. It's a Tuesday, which is part of our Tactics Tuesday hashtag series. So if you got questions, tactically related, whether you're talking formation, history, styles of play, what have you, wherever you want to take it, go ahead and throw them our way on Twitter at Soccer Down here, and we'll be getting into that here in a bit this morning. There is some kind of updated news. A few things have developed and a few things are bubbling up that we're going to touch on first, along with other general questions, all kinds of stuff this morning. That's what happens on a Tuesday where there's no games to talk about, right?
Right.
Okay. The big one is something that we've talked about before on this show, and Taylor Twellman tweeted it again yesterday. Bundesliga clubs have begun training and plan on having closed-door games to finish the league starting on May 2nd, 3rd. Cologne is one that has started training. They posted some pictures, and this was from the release that I thought was really interesting. This is describing the training. So it wasn't what you would normally expect, however. Instead, FC will now train in 3 small groups of 8 players. The first in the morning, the second in the afternoon, and the third will train individually at home. Between each session, the dressing room will be cleaned. Tackles are banned, as is every form of body contact. Eating and showering has to be at home. So it's, essentially the first step to getting fitness back up more than anything, because, you're not simulating anything like a normal match because you have no tackles, no contact. It's just to get back into the mix of things. So that's started in Germany. Now, Germany's been in a very different situation than some other countries in Europe. They've handled this, I don't know if they've handled it the best, but they've handled it pretty well. And they haven't had the widespread that other countries have faced. So they're going to give it a go to try to get back out on the field. And I think the biggest thing to look at is yesterday was April 6th. They're trying to play the first weekend in May. It's about a month of ramp-up time. And I think that's the key, because if they think they need a month of ramp-up time, how are the others going to do that? Are they going to do the same? Are they going to try to shorten it? Are they going to need more time? What are we going to have to see with that? Because that's a key. You can't just say, like, oh, now you can play games? Cool, we're going to play next week. That's not how it's going to work.
No, and Cologne being the test case here of saying, all right, if we block out close to a month.
Others are doing it too. Cologne's
right.
not the test case. Let's make that clear. They're not going out ahead of everybody else. Bundesliga clubs are training. They just described how they were training.
Right. And so I think that looking at how Cologne is approaching it, it's an interesting approach, and it's very well thought out, and you have a lot of different elements to juggle simultaneously. And so now we see, this one example and how successful it's going to be, but it looks like folks are coming out with ideas about how to get ready for playing with about a month's time to prepare.
Are you saying interesting in a negative sense? Or
no.
Okay. I wanted to make sure, because that word can have that meaning.
No. It's all right. So if Cologne says this, what are other teams doing along the same lines? That's how I'm viewing it as interesting. It's like, okay, so if Cologne has example X, how many other teams are going to follow that example and do 8, 8, and 8 and do it at home and have 2 separate groups and no tackling, that kind of stuff. All of the dynamic that they laid out for me was interesting, and I just want to see how it plays out.
I'd assume that's probably pretty consistent. I don't know. I don't know if Cologne came up with that on their own or if that's coming from the Bundesliga or the German federation. I'm not sure, but I would assume that everybody's in a fairly consistent. I don't think somebody's coming out there and saying, all right, full field scrimmage, let's go.
We're going to have 38 guys going all at the same time, but
nobody does that. No, that doesn't.
But just the notion of, all right, so some of you are at home, 1/3 of you are at home, 1/3 of you are later in the day, 1/3 of you are here, and so now that was, to me, just how well thought out it was. For me, was how I'm looking at it.
So we will keep an eye on Germany, and if they're able to get back underway in early May. If they are, then they're going to be able to avoid some big issues. And those issues are... It's not a minor thing that Germany's trying to figure out financially. So Kicker wrote something the other day that 13 clubs would have to file for insolvency, which is a type of bankruptcy. It's not full liquidation, but it's protection from creditors, forced renegotiation of debts. If the money doesn't come over from Sky TV, are you reading a book, John?
No. Flipping pages, that's all.
Okay. All right.
Flipping pages on a legal pad.
Yeah, all right. 13 clubs would have to file for insolvency. 12 clubs have already signed over the future TV payment to their banks in order to get liquidity. They're expecting that payment by May 1st. If there's no games, are they going to get that payment? Yeah. 7 second division clubs would be insolvent by the end of May, 2 by the end of June. In the Bundesliga, it'd be 1 club that is at risk of becoming insolvent in May, 3 in June. So it's about what we've talked about in the sense that first division clubs are bigger, they can withstand this a little bit better, but second division clubs are going to get hit by this in a bad way. I mean, if you're talking 7 by the end of May, that's 7 of 18 clubs. 2 more by the end of June. That's half the league.
Yep.
So that's one reason why Germany is trying to find a way to get back on the field, even if it's behind closed doors, even if it's ramping up with 8 guys training at a time. They're doing everything possible to avoid this, because this is the reality that a league that is strong and has always been looked at as a financially stable league in Germany is facing this. And that is what is going to be one element, not the only element, but one element driving this conversation as we go.
Yeah. And as you lay out the numbers that you're talking half the franchises in a league, it is the stark reality, the stark financial reality of all of this. And it's stuff that we talked about in other countries and in the Premier League and in the Championship, and having this element laid out in Germany with their leagues. Once again, it just puts everything out there on paper that there are financial realities to all of this, and it's threatening, it's frightening. There are a lot of other adjectives along that same line that are tied to it, but it is the reality of what we are facing right now.
It's going to factor into everything. It is, and on the American sports side, you're starting to get some conversation about how American leagues are going to get underway. And MLS hasn't been out in front of this, but Major League Baseball and its players union have discussed a scenario that would see all 30 teams playing games in empty ballparks around Phoenix, Arizona. You have Chase Field there, obviously, where the Diamondbacks play, but you have 10 spring training ballparks located within about 50 miles. Now, this would be kind of like what we've talked about with the NBA potentially doing it, what the Premier League was floating around. Basically, these guys, these teams would, and staffs and everybody associated with them, would go into isolation and would go play these games behind closed doors to get things in, but also get a TV product out. And it could be, who knows? I mean, I don't know how long it might be. It's hard to say, but they want to do this to get games started as soon as possible. I don't know if they've got to a timeline stage just yet, but this is something that's been talked about between the teams in Major League Baseball, the league, and the Players Association. So it's at least getting into some basic planning.
Yes. And you're looking at, with baseball, The one concern is, for me, you have 10 stadia plus Chase Field, and then you get into the aspects of safety of individuals, of the teams, and social distancing, and all of those elements that we've heard in all of this. So how you're looking at medical personnel who have to be a part of this and not taking them away from...
There's a couple things that I think we have to clarify here. Like, part of this is not just, okay, yeah, cool, we're going to go play and do whatever. These guys are going to be tested every day. And that's another big part of it, is they can't really do this until testing is widely available and there's enough tests that it's not taking tests away from the general public.
Right.
They're going to have to do that. Because then social distancing is not what you're not going to have guys, sitting 6 feet away in the dugout because they're all tested. They're all good. Now, does that mean that somebody can't get sick at some point somehow? Sure, it can happen. That's what we're all finding out with this. But they've also talked about having expanded rosters because of this, and being able to deal with if somebody has to go into quarantine because they get sick, then they would be able to bring somebody in, do whatever. I don't know. That's all things that have been talked about. But the biggest part about it, because this factors into the logistics, is you're not going to do this until you have your players, your staffs, everybody who would be in isolation safe and clear and not sick, because you're not going to put them in isolation if they're sick. So then that changes some of, like, social distancing doesn't become part of the conversation if everybody has the all clear and they are isolated. And if your isolation is working, then nobody's going to come in contact with anybody that has been sick. That's going to be the challenge. And that's where you get into how complicated this is. You're basically going into baseball in lockdown and expecting these guys, one, to be able to perform in that type of environment, and just figure out all the logistics to get it done, keep guys safe, also not be a drain on the medical facilities and how all of that works. I don't know. But it's being talked about. And it goes back to something we talked about yesterday. People are going to make a big push to get sports back because not just the economics of it. Of course, like in the Bundesliga, teams and leagues want to play because they want the money to come in. They don't want to default on payments. They want to be back to normal. But there's also a push from governments. And it's not just a U.S. government thing. I think it's everybody because of the power of sport. And if people are, being told to stay at home, being told that it's not safe to work in a normal fashion, not safe to go out and do things, having this type of product for them to consume, it's going to help the league, but it's also going to help boost the morale of people. And I think that's something we're all seeing, that, it would be nice to have some live sports to talk about. Yeah. So, it's got to be safe. That's the number one thing here. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying just go do it because it would be nice. Oh. But if you can guarantee all of those things and create a system that would work, yes, they're going to try to get back on the field as soon as it is safe to do so.
There's an article over at ESPN.com. You mentioned baseball, and that's why this popped into my head, how South Korea and the KBO are approaching things right now in trying to get their season going. And right now they're doing intra-squad scrimmages, and they're putting them on YouTube. And folks are gravitating to that as something to watch. But there are a lot of steps that the South Korean government has taken since the beginning about safety of all of their everyone who lives in the country, who works in the country, and it was how the KBO is working their way through all of these guidelines, making sure that players are quarantined. If they're coming from outside the country, they get their 2 weeks of quarantine. One of the players that they interviewed is a relief pitcher from Major League Baseball whose wife is a nurse, and she has been helping out in making sure that guidelines are adhered to and those kinds of things. And players have their temperatures taken multiple times a day. It's like when you come to the ballpark, you have your temperature taken, and if you're too high, you're turned around, you're sent home, and then you're taken care of that way. So there are a lot of fail-safes and a lot of different ways that the South Korean government and the KBO and the individual teams are trying to get something done where they can have their preseasons to get their games out there and have games that folks can attend if it gets to that point.
And those types of processes, I mean, the temperature thing, reportedly that's what's happening at any government function right now is press, media, staff, everybody. They're getting their temperature taken as they go into the White House.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's part of basic protocol, so I would assume that would be a part of whatever, ramp up it is to get back into action. A couple updates on other sports because it does relate to what MLS could be doing, what other soccer leagues could be doing. The NBA has said they can't make a decision until May 1st. They have discussed possible scenarios, but Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, said it's just too early, given what's happened right now, to even be able to project or predict where we will be in a few weeks. Now, he said they do want to ideally play some regular season games because they had... can't remember how many per team. I want to say around 10 or so.
Sounds
per
right.
team left, somewhere in that ballpark. Might have been a few more. They wanted to play at least some of those and then go into the postseason. The one thing in the NBA that helps a little bit here is the 8 spots in each conference are pretty much determined. Could you have some jockeying for seeds within each conference? Sure. But those regular season games are not as critical. You're not going to see somebody miss the playoffs because of it. You're not going to see somebody jump into the playoffs because of it, I don't think. So you're able to kind of use those essentially as preseason, give teams who we're going to have a few more dates, give them something at least, so they can fulfill their own local TV product and stuff, and get into the postseason. Don't know what that's going to look like. We've mentioned that the NBA had floated the idea of basically doing everything as a TV product, maybe even playing the games in training facilities because, if you're going to be behind closed doors, or we've seen it with WWE, is they've got a training facility, they've got a ring, it's a very small, live arena, so they can do events there. And right now they can't because of the changes in Florida, but they could before. Is there going to be a state where the NBA could do that? Maybe once you get to May 1st and you can start to talk about, okay, where are we now? You'll have a better sense of what that can look like. Golf has released their schedule for the 3 remaining majors. The British Open has been canceled for the year. The other 3 have moved to the second half of 2020, and it's set along with the PGA Tour schedule, which is set to resume play May 21st. Golf's a little different because you could easily do it with no spectators. Social distancing, if you're not doing all of the other testing, which I would assume you would be, is a little bit easier to accomplish on a golf course. So you can make it work faster, I think. I'm no expert on logistics of all this, but it seems like it'd be a much easier thing to get back to playing tournaments. And the majors would be in August, September, and November, with the Masters set for mid-November. And,
if every other sport is online, it does present challenges, and we talked about that amongst ourselves yesterday about what it could mean for host networks and things like that when it comes to their schedules and how crammed they would be. But to your point about golf, you would anticipate that, if you did twosomes plus caddy and TV personnel and no spectators, that to me it seems like golf could be one of the first sports that you could have folks without spectators for the viewing public to have something to watch and gravitate toward it. It makes the most sense in a logistics thought because of how you could space things and get everybody back out there.
Yeah, it seems like it. There's always complication. There's always stuff behind the scenes that's going to make it difficult, and we'll see if that factors in here. But that's the plan, is third week or so of May, the PGA Tour would resume. Now, let's get into the soccer side of things, because there was some big news late yesterday. This had been alleged for a long time, and I think all of us kind of took it for granted that it happened. But now you have confirmation, because the legal case is out there, according to the prosecutors. Bribes were paid to have votes go for the World Cup in 2018 in Russia and 2022 in Qatar. Bribes were paid, and now that's what prosecutors are saying. It's not alleged. It's not bribes paid for all these other things. It was always kind of assumed. Well, now you've got names and you've got things that are pointing to this directly. So 2 former Fox Sports executives have been charged with participating in this scheme as well. Hernan Lopez and Carlos Martinez. They helped bribe officials at CONMEBOL, the South American Confederation. This is according to a U.S. grand jury indictment that was unsealed yesterday. Lopez and Martinez were high-ranking executives of a Fox Sports international subsidiary, where they were responsible for developing Fox Sports broadcasting business in South America. Now, I think a lot of people, when they saw this, immediately jumped to say, like, oh, Fox in the United States paid bribes. Not exactly, or were paid vibes. It's not quite that simple. Lopez is a dual U.S. and Argentine citizen. He was the chief executive of the Fox Sports subsidiary. Martinez is a dual U.S. and Mexican citizen who served as the president. They were charged with wire fraud and money laundering. Of course, the lawyers for the two are defending them, which you would expect. They're involved in different things now. There's been other people charged as well, but this was all basically that, in addition to those folks who have been charged on that side, this is the first time an indictment has directly alleged that several of FIFA's top executives received bribes to support Russia and Qatar's bids. The Qatari and Russian bid teams have denied everything. That's standard. It was one of the most bizarre things. I don't know if people were watching this and paying attention to it. December of 2020, I remember exactly where I was, because Atlanta was bidding to host games in either 18 or 22, and by this point, it looked like the U.S. was more likely to get 22, with England being a front runner for 18. I was watching it at an event that the Atlanta Bid Committee was hosting at Stats in Midtown, and Twitter was fairly young at the time, but I was following media reports out of Europe, and everybody came into the day with the expectation that England would get 18, although that wasn't as sure of a thing, but the U.S. would get 22, no questions asked. I mean, the business, the money, the money they made from 94, take that to 22, and FIFA's going to get, paid. Well, I was following Twitter at the event at Stats, and it's like, all the information was changing. All the different reports, all the people who were getting leaks, it was starting to change that, no, wait a minute. Like, this bid that nobody took seriously because it makes no sense. They were talking about building temporary stadiums and then deconstructing them and then rebuilding them in Africa. They were talking about, like, air-conditioned stadium, all this stuff. It didn't make any logistical sense. So nobody took it seriously. But it won the World Cup bid somehow. And it was the craziest event because everybody came into the building like, yeah, this is going to be a great day. Atlanta's going to be, a front-running city to get World Cup games coming up soon. And this is 2010. This is before you had Atlanta United. You didn't have professional soccer in Atlanta at the time because the Silverbacks were on hiatus. This was a big, big, big deal. And it all came crashing down. And nobody really 100% knew why. Of course, immediately you start getting allegations, you start getting, people saying stuff, but you don't know. Well, now, 10 years later, you're getting, allegations in an indictment that FIFA people were taking bribes to vote for Russia and Qatar. And now it's in black and white. It's not just an allegation at this point. It's craziness.
There are a lot of different places that you can catch up with this. If you have your subscription to Soccer America, recommended. Someone on the show had recommended to me that I should get a subscription to that, and I have followed through. I have followed suit, and I've been reading those particular elements of Soccer America's reporting on it. And Paul Kennedy posted something very, very late last night, very early this morning about it. For those that do not have the paywall for the New York Times, Tariq Panja and Kevin Draper have done a tremendous article, but you can also follow Panja's timeline on Twitter and get the information that way, because he's taken some screenshots of the actual indictment. And the fact that it is now in black and white with highlights, it's, for those who follow along when it comes to Olympic bids and things like that, I know that there's folks who will sit there and throw up their hands and go, "Oh, it didn't surprise me that this happened, and now that this has happened, it's here in front of us." But to see it laid out like this after 4.5 years of investigating and press conferences, to now see it like this, it's pretty stunning.
All right, let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. The moments that swung the vote, Spain was the other one that was trying to get, I think, 2018. It kind of going into the day, it had settled that 18 would be in Europe and 22 would be elsewhere. So England and Spain, kind of a toss-up. I think England felt like they had it. Spain put up a strong bid as well, but Russia got it instead, which was surprising, but not to the same level as Qatar getting it, because
Right.
It just made no logistical sense. What swung it, according to the indictment, is payments amounting to millions of dollars funneled through shell companies in the weeks before the executives gathered in Switzerland. Jack Warner, CONCACAF of Trinidad and Tobago, allegedly received some $5 million to pick Russia as the 2018 host. He's been fighting extradition from Trinidad and Tobago for quite a while. He was indicted in the U.S. in 2015. The Fox Sports side of it is the interesting one that I didn't expect to see. So Lopez and Martinez relied on loyalty secured through the payment of bribes to certain CONMEBOL officials in connection with the Copa Libertadores to advance the business interests of Fox beyond the Copa Libertadores, including by obtaining confidential information from co-conspirator number one, who most people think was Julian Grondona of the Argentine Federation, who has passed away, but has not been named in anything. Everybody thinks that's who it was. Lopez and Martinez were supposed to get confidential information from him regarding bidding for the rights to broadcast the 18 and 22 World Cup tournaments in the United States. So it's not like Fox in the U.S. is directly linked, but people who worked for Fox in South America are reportedly getting information about the bidding process and how they can secure these rights. If I remember correctly, another follow-up from this was the fact that they got the rights extended to 26 later, and I don't know if it's exactly part of this. The part that I just read does not talk about 26. Tariq Panja mentions the cozy deal to extend the rights to 26 in his tweet. It's not directly laid out, but 26 was gifted to Fox when 22 moved into the end of the year. If you remember, when Fox got their rights, it was for 18 and 22. 26 was going to come up for bid. One reason why that angered a whole lot of people is by this stage, it's obvious that 26, and this is before it was given to the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, it was kind of obvious that FIFA knew they'd screwed up here, and they had to give the U.S. a tournament here quickly. They probably thought they might avoid some of these indictments if they did that. Well, not so fast. But if you are NBC, if you are ESPN, if you are, anybody, CBS, as we've seen, is now getting into the soccer business, anybody would have been interested in bidding for a World Cup being hosted in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. That's a giant duh. And it didn't even go out for bid. FIFA just said, here, since we're moving the other World Cup to later in the year, and we know that's complicated for you because of the NFL and college football and all these things, here's the rights to 26. Here, have them. Makes no sense. I mean, I'm sure there was probably a minimum type of payment or whatever, just taking the payment for 22, extending it to 26. But there was no bid that would have brought a ton of money in. That had to raise questions. I don't know if it's deeper in the indictment. It could be. Tariq Panja mentions it, but in the section that is posted there, it's talking about the rights for 18 and 22. The 26 part is not included. I don't know if that's part of this. But when you just talk about coziness and confidential information and connections and all that, well, you can connect the dots.
Deep in the Panja article itself, it says in 2011 it was announced that Fox had agreed to pay more than $400 million for the English language rights in the U.S. to the men's 2018 and 22 World Cups, as well as the women's 2015 and 2019 World Cups.
It's the way that it goes together. FIFA packages everything. So
right.
you're basically getting a 4-year chunk of the men's World Cup, the women's World Cup, all the U20s, all the U17s, all of that you get. And I think there's probably some minimum broadcast requirements for the U20, the youth World Cups.
Yes. The win was a surprise. Still quoting the Panja article quickly, the win was a surprise as ABC and ESPN had broadcast the Men's World Cup since 1994. FIFA later awarded Fox the rights to broadcast the 2026 World Cup without holding an open bidding process after Fox had challenged the Federation's decision to move the 2022 tournament to late fall from its traditional summer window.
So the 26 part is not directly part of this indictment, but again, you can start to connect dots with the way everything played out. I don't remember exactly the conversation around the bidding process at that time. I know people were surprised that Fox got it, but I believe that Fox also put up a lot of money. It's not like they got it on the cheap, but if they had confidential information from FIFA people, maybe they knew up exactly how much they had to put up. Maybe that's where that part comes into it a little bit. Or, as we've seen, FIFA might have just said, you know what, we'll take this money under the table more than what comes in publicly because they turned down a World Cup in the United States to have it in Qatar.
And
so, who knows?
Why not? Yeah. Just kind of throw up your hands at this point and say, sure, okay, whatever.
No, it's not a whatever. It's a paper bag, lots of cash, unmarked bills, non-sequential, all the things that they tell you to worry about.
Oh, yeah.
And you can deliver that to my hotel room. Yes, and this didn't happen.
No, did not happen at all.
Yeah, there's no whatever. That's the whatever. It is under the table. It is bribes. It is flat out cash. Straight cash, homie. Randy Moss knows all about it.
He does. And, once again, you look at these things through the prism of Olympics and Olympic committees and the IOC and things like that when it comes to who's going to get things. And now you see it stretched over into the World Cup from 2022 and 26.
Not like it hadn't been happening in FIFA before. This is the first time you've seen an indictment. I don't remember. Have you seen anything like this in the Olympics or any other major international event? It
is. I mean, you mean an indictment or bribes?
No, an indictment, like people going to jail.
No. Okay. The indictments, no. Bribes are the biggest unkept secret when it comes to getting Olympiads known to mankind. Yeah.
Oh, sure. No, That's been known. I mean, but how you want to define it, that can go a lot of different directions. The gifts.
Yes.
And that's, part of bidding process. Like, it's written into the rules. It's like, you can give a gift, but it can only be up to this amount, and it can only be this kind of thing. And, yeah, okay.
Hey, that watch looks really nice on your wrist.
Oh, watches are common. Like, that's nothing. That's legal at this point. That's legal bribing. It's the paper bags of money. That's
yes.
the problem.
The $11 billion in a paper bag that is dropped off in a box that has a nice bow on it and Christmas wrapping paper delivered to the front of a hotel. And hey, this is for room 272.
Yeah, that's where it goes to a whole nother level. There's something I wanted to mention very quickly about this, if I can find it.
Well,
go ahead.
You go look, and I've got one other thing that I thought was interesting from the Panja article. More than half the people involved in the votes for the 2018 and 2022 World Cups, including the former FIFA president Sepp Blatter, have been accused of wrongdoing, though not necessarily criminally charged.
Yeah, that's what I was pulling. Nick Harris, who tweets at Sporting Intel, posted the list of people who voted on this in 2010 and what has happened with them since. The possibilities are B, has been banned or serving a ban for corruption / breaches of ethics. C, accused / indicted for / or been convicted of criminal corruption. D, involved in FBI / Department of Justice case of criminal schemes, racketeering, etc. Or E, accused of ethical violations but never prosecuted. So out of the 22 people who voted, the only people who have nothing next to their name, there's 6 of them. We've got a couple who have been accused of ethical violations but never prosecuted. And, I mean, you're talking in their careers. Like, this is not even just related to this. This is just a career retrospective of their work in this field of bribery and corruption and breaches of ethics.
A career retrospective of bribery and corruption.
Yes, that's where we're at here. Even the ones who don't have anything by their name, for the most part, have some interesting things that are described about them. For example, Hani Abu-Rida, who's from Egypt, he accompanied Mohammed bin Haman from Qatar, who is one who has been banned for life after multiple bribery and conflict of interest allegations. Next to Rita's name, accompanied bin Haman on 2011, quote, cash in brown bags, unquote, trip to Trinidad. No, it was a CONCACAF meeting that it was like bags of cash showed up. They just showed up. That happens. It happens at meetings I go to all the time. Just bags of cash.
You and me both. Yes.
You expect a dessert? No, it's a bag of cash. You think some chocolate cake's coming? No, it's just a bag of cash. That happens totally all the time. I mean, you've got one of the guys who's accused of ethics. He denied a $1.5 million bribe payment over the 2002 World Cup going to Japan. You've got people who were named by Panorama for taking 1990s ISL bribes, which was the marketing arm of FIFA. One of the Russian members on the executive committee has an Olympic lifetime ban for his role in the state-sponsored doping scandal. Oh, man. Platini is banned for receiving a disloyal payment of £1.6 million from Sepp Blatter. And he backed Qatar in this bid. Chung Moon-jun of South Korea banned for 6 years for 5 ethics breaches over 2018/22 bidding conduct. Sepp Blatter, we know. I mean, it's a lifetime achievement award for Sepp Blatter. Presided over decades of corruption, banned for 6 years for payment to Platini. That's the one they nailed him on. We'll see what else comes up. You've got serially accused of taking bribes for votes, 5-year ban for forgery, banned for life after multiple bribery.
Good resume.
Fined for blanking corruption inquiry. Okay. Arrested for alleged embezzlement. Yeah, good times. Mentioned Julio Grondona of Argentina. He passed away in 2014, but he was named by FIFA in 2015 as authorizing a $10 million bribe around the 2010 World Cup. And, I mean, I remember when that happened, people were like, well, I mean, we kind of know that Grondona's been involved in bribery and all kinds of, untoward things, but he's dead now, and you're just pinning random things on him.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like we kind of know he's been involved in things. We don't know if he was involved in that one, but yeah, he's dead, so you can just kind of pin things on him at this point. I'm surprised they didn't try to pin the whole thing to him.
The Lindbergh baby kidnapping.
Yeah, I mean, people like Franz Beckenbauer. Beckenbauer banned for blanking corruption inquiry under investigation for alleged 2006 bribes that took the World Cup to Germany. I mean, Chuck Blazer, we know, passed away in 2017. I mean, the description is massive crook in all senses. Yeah. Jack Warner, all-around corruption king. Yeah,
yes.
That about sums it up. I mean, it's just, you got people on the Interpol red list. This was the FIFA Executive Committee. And 6 of the 22 don't have something specifically pinned on them, even if it's just an ethical violation they were accused of. Only 6 have nothing. And even of those 6, you got cash in brown bags guy. Come on.
Yeah, you got some in that list that have really who have hit for the corruption triple crown. I mean, that's serious.
Jack Warner is the king, and Chuck Blazer was right there with him, and that's what kind of started all of this. Was Blazer got nailed on taxes, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, I can tell you some stories, and that might help me. Oh,
yep.
Well, I know this guy right over here. And that's what started the whole thing, alongside the anger about, we know there's bribes that got a World Cup to Qatar. Like, it's blatantly obvious at this point. It's one thing when a World Cup goes to Germany in 2006, there's reported bribes. It's Germany. They can host a World Cup. They can do a good job with it, and it was a good World Cup. But reportedly, that World Cup was going to go to South Africa. Well, it didn't. It went to Germany instead. So then they throw it to South Africa in 2010. You probably had to make up some bribes to get it there, too. Then it's just all about, all right, well, we screwed this country over. We got to give them something. Here's some cash. Here's a brown paper bag. All right, now we got to move it over here. All right, now it's time to get paid. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So this is only going to continue to have more and more and more and more come out from it.
If you had the chance, would you go cover, if you were an accredited member of the media, you passed inspection, everything worked with the World Cup committee, would you go cover the 2022 World Cup in Qatar?
Cover it in that way? No. Would I call games? I would rather be doing it from a studio, not in the country.
Just thought I would ask.
It's tough because, well, there's other things with Qatar that factor into it that have nothing to do with the bribery side, which, again, makes this even more highlighted of, holy crap, that's a lot of bribes to overcome all of this. I have always kind of wondered if that tournament's actually going to happen like it's supposed to, and now it's not even happening like it was originally supposed to. Is it going to happen? I still don't know. Like you have been completely ridiculously about Inter Miami being a real team, even though they've played games. I'm like that about the 22 World Cup, and I think I have a little more to stand on about it.
True.
I'll believe it when it happens, because it would not surprise me, with all of the multitude of different reasons why that thing should not happen in the way that it's currently booked to happen. It wouldn't surprise me if something eventually becomes the reason why it doesn't. I understand to a degree, and this is a very small degree, of the reticence of just pulling it at this point after these types of things have come out, Now, this, again, is the first time that this is in black and white. Bribes are paid, flat out. Here you go. An indictment from outside of FIFA. Because the bans and things on the FIFA side have been other things. It hasn't been directly like the Jack Warner one. $5 million went to Jack Warner for him to vote for Russia. Like, it hasn't been that cut and dried. I do get from a political and probably worldwide political situation of how do you get out of this? And there's not an easy way to do it. It's going to be a mess. That's not even getting into how Qatar's building their stadiums and all of the human rights violations, and that's a whole nother issue why the World Cup shouldn't be there. But you already took the money and booked the tournament, and now you've moved worldwide schedules around to make it happen. Well, worldwide schedules might get moved around again now because of the coronavirus, and does that give you an opportunity to say, well, now we have in black and white, and we can't just try to hide it with a paper bag. Now we've got it in black and white that bribes were paid around this tournament, and now we're having to move the schedules around. We just can't do a World Cup in the winter of 22, and it's just not going to work. I don't know. I don't think FIFA's got the guts to do that.
I was going to say, because then what you're doing in essence is you're telling the Qataris that we can't have the World Cup in 2022, and now you're not honoring the alleged bribe,
Right. Well, a lot of the people who received the bribes are either no longer with us or are no longer in positions to do anything about it. That's one of the interesting elements of this. So, I don't know. That's the problem, is I don't think there's an easy way out, even with everything that points you to getting out. And I don't know how they handle it.
Yeah.
I think first right now is getting through this whole situation. And we talked about it yesterday. FIFA has said that they are going to give the go-ahead to extend the current calendar for the 2019-2020 seasons that are ongoing. They're going to extend it. So you're not worried right now about the transfer window coming up. They're going to mess with that. They're going to figure out a way about contracts that end on June 30th. They're going to work through all that because they want seasons to be played. And I think as we've talked about all the TV side of things, there's a lot of reasons to get the seasons played. We understand that. So that's number one priority. Now, what that does to the calendar could have an effect on 22. We'll see. I don't know if it's going to have that kind of an effect, but it's going to have an effect. That will happen, and we'll just have to see what it does to it. I mean, depending on how it goes, like in some ways, having a World Cup later in the year in 22 might be a help to the worldwide calendar. It could be a hindrance depending on when things get back underway.
Yeah.
But so far, and I have not seen one yet, this hit yesterday late in the afternoon. I have not seen an official response from FIFA, from Qatar, from Russia.
Saw one from Russia.
Oh, you did see one from Russia. Okay. An official response or?
Yeah, through TASS.
Okay.
They denied it, TASS? Of course. Their official, the government official news agency.
Okay.
TASS denied anything and everything, and they also it was in Panja's timeline. So let me find it real quick because I want to get the wording properly figured out. But yeah, TASS basically said, no, everything was cool with us. We didn't do anything wrong. But, yeah, Russia denies it bribed officials to secure the 2018 World Cup. Russia also denied it ran a state-backed doping program. That's from Panja's timeline from 2 hours ago.
They threw that in too?
Yep.
Like that was a part of this statement, or that's just like they've denied that in the past?
Apparently it was the same statement. Panja has it as a part of his release from 2 hours ago.
So...
we'll just throw that in there, too.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't do that either.
Yeah.
Okay.
As an by the way.
Yeah, all right. That's believable, yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy.
Right there with you, Skip.
Yeah. One more thing on the news side before we get into Twitter and before we take it to some Tactics Tuesday. Mark J. Burns of the Sports Business Journal reported that monthly salaries for MLS, payment of players, has not been affected yet. Health and medical benefits, not been affected. Nothing has changed with MLS in terms of paying players right now. That's different than some other leagues, and Spain is going through it. They tried to do the same conversations that England did with their Players Association and got nowhere. It's going to be down to individual clubs to figure it out. We've mentioned Barcelona. Now others are going to have to sort through that. I don't know, and this is the type of stuff that I'll be looking for over the next few days and weeks, is like that breakdown from Kicker in Germany of what it's looking like financially with these different clubs and leagues. You know, how many clubs in Spain are at risk of going out of business or at least going into some form of bankruptcy, insolvency, if you don't get this next round of TV money? You know, how many are on the brink? And Spain, England, all of it. Like, I'm really curious to see that, because that will affect how leagues and teams deal with this.
We've seen stuff in the lower divisions in the pyramid in Britain where they are furloughing players completely, so that way they can get government assistance in this time. And I know of only a handful of teams who have announced that kind of stuff publicly. I'm wondering if there's going to be more that will do complete and total furloughs, so that way their players can have some kind of income coming in, because as we all know, the salaries in the Premier League are nowhere close in First Division, in the Championship, League One, League Two. So, you know, is that a sign of the times when it comes to complete furloughs for teams, for players in the lower division, as they try to get their finances squared away toward the other end of all this?
Yeah, I mean, the furlough thing in England, I know, has been a little confusing for people because, and maybe you can explain this a little bit better, you've got a situation where clubs are furloughing non-playing staff because they qualify for payments from the government, correct?
80% of your salary, I believe, is covered in the furloughing aspect.
So it kind of ends up becoming a bit of a buyout for clubs. They're able to, or a bailout, it's a better way to put it, where they're able to not have to have that come out of their books, but comes out of the government books for staff members. Right?
Yeah. That sounds lined up right.
Okay. And a furlough is not the same as fired or laid off.
No.
I don't know if that changes in England, but I know my understanding of it, a furlough is basically like, we don't have work for you right now. We want to bring you back, but there's nothing for you to do at the moment.
Yes.
Okay. I know a lot of people have really hammered Liverpool on this for their decision to take advantage of that. Manchester City has said they won't. Manchester United has said they won't. Other clubs have as well, so Liverpool's not the only one. I don't think there's a right answer and a wrong answer on that. I mean, I want staff members to get paid as much as possible in this time, because that's not their fault. It's not anybody's fault that this is going on, but clubs do have realities, even a club like Liverpool. And I think that's what people have to understand is, Liverpool made money last year. Liverpool has very rich owners. Oh, that's absolutely true. But it is a business. And where you're able to essentially offset costs, businesses are going to look to do that. Is it ethical? Is it right? Is it wrong? That's a different argument. I don't know. I think it's hard to be mad at Liverpool if you're not going to be mad at the others. You know what I mean? Like, yes, Liverpool's more successful than Newcastle, for example.
Right.
But it's a little hard to say, well, no, you shouldn't get this money offset to help balance your books just because you've done a better job. But it's okay for Newcastle because they've done a bad job. You know what I mean? Like that. Every business is different. And, in a perfect world, of course, you get to the situations where City and Manchester United are saying, no, it's just business as usual, and we'll just continue, and you'll get paid. That would be the best way for all of this to happen. But if that's not possible, then that's not possible. And some clubs are preemptively trying to avoid trouble later by doing this. And that's part of business, right? I mean, it's controlling cash flow. It's controlling costs. It is part of it. It's not easy around all of it. And I think I do like what I think City and United have both told their employees who are not working, who are getting paid. We are, I think, strongly encouraging you, has been the quote, to volunteer with the NHS, the National Health Service. And that's great. That would be the ideal, is that clubs would be able to pay everybody and keep it rolling. And yes, then those employees can volunteer and help the greater good. Sad truth is not every club's in a position to actually be able to do that. Can Liverpool do that? Probably. But when others are taking advantage of this, why is Liverpool getting shouted at because they've run their business better? Why aren't we shouting at Newcastle for running their business badly?
Please shout at Mike Ashley as much as possible.
I mean, that's a given, but there's no right answers in any of this. And I think that's the frustration with all of it, is there's no obvious way to handle all of it, because every club at different levels are in different situations. Of course, lower division clubs are going to have to do that because they're in a really bad situation. We've talked about it from the Aberdeen perspective, and they found a way to navigate it probably as well as anybody. But it's not easy. Mm-mm. And it's not easy for a Liverpool. It's not easy for a Notts County,
And let's see what in the Premier League so far we have heard Newcastle, Norwich, and Bournemouth have been the ones that are at the bottom of the financial scale when it comes to the Premier League, taking those steps about pay cuts. And we mentioned last week about Eddie Howe taking a pay cut to make sure that some bottom lines were being met.
Well, now that's different. That's a different conversation. Taking pay cuts and getting furloughed so the government pays 80% of what you would have made. Those are two very different conversations. So, staff, coaches, players taking a pay cut to avoid those situations, that's a whole nother element that we haven't talked about. And I think that was part of this conversation between the clubs and the Players Association. The clubs wanted that to happen. The players did not want to do that. And now you've got all this confusion and pointing fingers, and none of it's helping anybody.
No. Liverpool chief executive Peter Moore yesterday admitted that they were wrong to come to the conclusion they should apply for taxpayer funds to pay 80% of the wages for some non-football staff, and were, quote, end quote, truly sorry. And now Tottenham has come under the same kind of pressure to follow Liverpool's example in reversing their decision.
But this is what's hard about it. Why is it so bad and so wrong outside of the PR conversation of this for Liverpool and Tottenham to do it, and it's okay for Norwich and Newcastle to do it? You know what I'm saying?
No, I do.
I understand that Liverpool and Tottenham are in different financial situations. I get that. They have the means to do it. But, I mean, I guess some of this is probably down to just things being coordinated in general. And this is why MLS is in a very different conversation, because everybody's the same under MLS.
Right.
You're all sharing in it. Like, are some clubs making more money? Yeah, because they're running their business better. But nobody's taking the complete and utter hit that clubs in other parts of the world are. I don't know. I mean, I don't have access to Liverpool and Tottenham's books. Like, can they just, pay everybody, no questions, no problem for, ever? No, because you got to have revenue come in. When does that time come for them? Probably comes later than it would for Norwich. But when? Because it's the same situation. And that's what's so hard about all this. Liverpool came out and said that because they got hit PR-wise. They got hit in the court of public opinion, and that's why they came out and said it. And now that's why Tottenham might have to do something different too. Is that going to continue on to other clubs who have done this? Because clubs are clubs. I mean, Norwich is a club in the Premier League, just like the others. Clubs in the Championship are trying to be Premier League clubs, just like the others. Clubs in lower divisions are clubs, just like the others. So why is it okay for some and not okay for others? That's what's so frustrating about all of this, because, again, it becomes a distraction, and everybody starts pointing their fingers at one another instead of doing what is happening in Germany, where they're trying to find the way forward. They're trying to find the way forward and making plans to move forward and get things back in action. These guys can't even agree on what's right and wrong in paying staff.
I know, it's frustrating across the board.
I mean, there's not a perfect answer.
No, and I think that in, say, England, you're going to have 90-something different answers, or at least I think that you may have something akin to that. That's just my own, because I don't think that one answer works for every club. Manchester United chooses not to furlough staff. Okay, that's Manchester United. Put that over here to the side. That is what works for them right now currently. Liverpool had an idea, and now they've reversed it because they got hammered in the court of public opinion. Tottenham had an idea about Daniel Levy among 550 people on their staff roster taking pay cuts. So, and you have teams in League One and League Two who are doing complete and total furloughs, and telling their players and their staff to go in this direction. I think that you're going to have, or at least you'd like to think that you would have, 90-plus different answers as to how to handle something like this, and it should be taken, as we look at it from the outside, on a case-by-case basis, what works for you in your current financial environment, because not all finances are equal.
Right. And even for a Liverpool or a Manchester United, like, their finances are not going to be perfect forever with no revenue coming in. There is a limit there at some point. And Greg Clark, the FA chairman, issued a statement today about a lot of this. Starts with the reality. We face the danger of losing clubs and leagues as finances collapse. Many communities could lose the clubs at their heart with little chance of resurrection. In the face of this unprecedented adversity, all the stakeholders within the game, from players, fans, clubs, owners, and administrators, need to step up and share the pain to keep the game alive. Sounds a lot like what Dietmar Hopp was saying in Germany early on about solidarity. Everyone should understand that the Premier League clubs are not immune from the impact of this, and whilst they are impacted to different degrees depending on their cost base, the potential overall financial impact is huge. We must have a plan to ensure that English football is not decimated should this season be lost and next season blighted. We hope we do not need this plan, as we are all determined to finish the professional football season. However, we would be fools not to develop such a contingency plan. Those that lost their clubs because English football did not rise to the challenge would rightly judge us harshly. Time is pressing as football burns through its cash reserves with no sign yet of a resumption of the game. Pointing fingers serves no purpose. It is time for the stakeholders to agree common cause to save our game. Contribute. Football is a team game, and now is the time for teamwork. Yep. That's something that Liverpool, Manchester City, Manchester United, the heavyweights financially in the Premier League, are going to have to put a little more on their backs right now. And they're going to have to figure out ways, one, to secure their strength, but also work to secure the strength of the country's game as a whole, as best as they possibly can. And they're not going to be able to solve everything. There are going to be smaller clubs that absolutely go away. Potentially smaller leagues, some of the nationwide leagues, some of the regional leagues. Yeah, it's not going to look the same when we get back to it. It's not. It can't. It's impossible. So it's going to be on the haves to help the have-nots. Or you're going to have more suffering because of that if you can't do that. So, I mean, in a perfect world, no, Newcastle's not going to have to, furlough anybody and have the government pay for it because they're getting help from other clubs. Now, the other clubs, are they going to be in a position to help? And that's the part that we just don't know across the board what that could look like.
Yeah. And, we've discussed it on soccer over there about teams that are in financial trouble. Doesn't really matter what European country we talk about, because we seem to talk about it in pretty much every European league, that there is some team in some part of the pyramid, and even some at the top parts of the pyramid, that are in trouble. And for every Manchester United, and I know I'm taking this as a straight line, I'm not taking it as a part of the pyramid, but for every Manchester United, for every Tottenham, for every Liverpool, there's a Macclesfield Town. There's a Brescia. There's the discussions that we had in League One about what could happen in the German pyramid. So the questions now come to the top decision makers in each of these countries, if not for the entire region, about how are you going to figure out what the new normal is and how you help out the athletes that are involved, the teams that are involved, and the communities that are involved. Because you can't continue in the new normal, because I don't think it would be fiscally feasible for teams to go into receivership again. And, we've talked about it with Bury and Bolton, and we've talked about that into the ground to a certain deal. But you're going to have teams who are in trouble. Is it going to be a possibility or an outlet for these teams to go into receivership, to continue to borrow money, to continue to outspend their means? I don't think that you're going to be able to see as much of that, if any of that, as we have in the past when we come out of this on the other side. I just don't.
Spain has said a little bit more too. Javier Tebas, who's the president of La Liga, he gave a couple different scenarios for what it could look like. Tebas said, of all the different scenarios we've been looking at with UEFA to go back to competing, the most probable ones are May 28, June 6, or June 28th. We can't say an exact date. This will be given to us by the authorities in Spain, but we still have time to get back to training before that. Right now, the May 28 date is the earliest because training can't resume in Spain right now because of the emergency measures in place by the Spanish government. They're in place until April 26th. So if you start to look that month of preparation, okay, that's why April 26th, if they're lifted, Spanish clubs could ease back into training, kind of like the German clubs are right now, and try to play May 28. Now, here's the financials for what Tebas is saying about La Liga. And he is the president of La Liga. I don't know exactly how the league structure is in Spain. In this case, is he the president of the first and second division, just the first division? I don't know that exactly. But he said, if we are looking at the economic impact, including the money we would get from European competitions, the revenue Spanish clubs would miss out on if we don't get back playing again is €1 billion. If we do get playing but without spectators, it would be 300 million. Even if we get back to playing with spectators, the damage this situation has already caused would be €150 million. Tebas said there's two strategies being worked on with this working group, which includes representatives from the European Clubs Association and the European leagues that UEFA has put together. One of the scenarios involves domestic league matches being played on weekends, European and cup competitions in midweek. The second is to play blocks of fixtures with domestic competitions being finished in June and July before the European games are finished in July and August. Tebas also said it's logical that some leagues may start before others because of the different waves of the infections with the virus. He said if they can start, they should. I also said that some clubs may not be able to play games at their own stadiums because some already had renovations, construction work planned at stadiums. They might not have access to their stadium in the summer because it's being worked on, construction's being done. There's just no way to know. He said it's much more complicated than just making a decision. Each country is different. In England, you have 3 competitions. In Spain and Italy, it's 2, talking about League Cup, and in England, League Cup, which has been completed. Right? They've had the final for that? Or do they haven't had the final for the Carabao?
Thought that was Manchester City.
Yeah. Okay, that's done. So, okay, cool. But he says there are 18 teams in the German league. All the others have 20. So you've got different things with the calendar, with the schedule, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He said right now they're not considering changing formats. He said, think about the top leagues. We have sold our broadcasting rights based on certain formats. We have 20 clubs and 380 matches played during a specific period of time. UEFA has also sold its rights based on a format, including the qualifiers and the group phase. This applies to everyone. Absolutely true, because if you and that's a good point about UEFA. So one of the ideas was Champions League, once you finish the current round that was interrupted, you just go everything to one game. Well, that means you're going to have to give money back to your TV partners because you're not delivering the same number of games. That's a reality. That's part of this conversation. Tebas said that La Liga has received 90% of its broadcasting right payments. So there's 10% they're still waiting to bring in. But 28% of the season is remaining. So if games aren't played, money's going back to the TV partners. That's not easy. And Spain has not gotten anywhere on a league-wide cut in salaries. Obviously, Tebas said, which is a big duh statement, but it is quite complicated to get players to accept less money. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. It's going to be tough. Let's see. Was there anything else? He also said that financial fair play regulations should continue to be implemented, but have to be altered because of all this. Things are going to have to change a little bit. And he's been a heavy critic of Manchester City, of PSG, and how they got around financial fair play, or basically created the need for financial fair play. So he doesn't want to see that go away, although he accepts that it's going to need to be modified a little bit here in the short term.
La Liga for Tebas means that he is in charge of the Primera and Segunda divisions,
Okay.
so 42 clubs that make up those two.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure, but I thought it might be the first and second. All right, we've had all kinds of news stuff and all kinds of conversations, but we've got other stuff to get into too. Let's go to Twitter. Join the conversation with us at Soccer Down here if you want to be part of the show. Go ahead.
All right. Actually, some folks came into the timeline and commented about Soccer Files yesterday, your history of the MLS bids in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And what was it like to put that together?
I mean, I'd done a lot of that research before, so it was kind of cool to look back at it and add a couple little elements to it. I remember when the conversation was starting. I mean, I remember a little bit further back where U.S. Soccer was trying to decide what the first division league would be, and you had MLS, which didn't exist at the time, but had the right people around it to potentially make it into a major league. Now, it took longer than anybody thought, but it has turned into that. You had the APSL, which was your prototypical American soccer league at that time. That was fly-by-night, that teams would come and go, players come and go, played in high school stadiums. Could that turn into a major league? That's tough to pull off. And then you had some crazy, wild thing called League One America that was going to play under different rules and all kinds of weird things. There were actually elements of it that did carry over, especially building soccer-specific stadiums. But outside of that, it wouldn't have been soccer. It would have been something completely different. There's some articles about the proposed format of that. It was crazy. So, I mean, honestly, it was kind of a no-brainer that it would be MLS, but the APSL side of it factored in here in Atlanta because, one, it's a lot easier to start an APSL team, and you had somebody who put up money to do it, even though he ultimately didn't have enough money to put the team on the field. But the biggest problem with the Atlanta MLS bid was you didn't have an owner-operator driving it. So you couldn't get anywhere on the stadium, and there weren't really a lot of options stadium-wise at the time. Tech didn't want to share Bobby Dodd, Fulton County at this time, I don't know, and I'd have to go back and cross-reference it. I don't know if the plan had already been 100% public about Turner Field becoming a thing after the Olympics and Fulton County being torn down. But it was not a consideration for MLS because at the worst you had the Braves play in there. So you weren't going to have MLS play in there. They didn't want to be in a baseball park at that time. That's changed, obviously. You had DeKalb Memorial, which was being talked about mainly because it was being considered for a lot of different things. It was being considered for a track and field training facility for the Olympics, so there was talk about putting a lot of money into it and refurbishing it and upgrading it. And, I mean, the guts were there of what could have been kind of like Lockhart in Fort Lauderdale that the Miami Fusion played at. You know, a 20,000-seat stadium that, you know, if you could have made the field wider, would have worked really well. But there was a lot of hurdles to jump through. And then there was this mythical proposed stadium at Life University that was mentioned like every year for about 10 years, it seemed like, that never happened. Never happened in any of the proposed ways. It was going to be a 20,000-seat stadium. I think the facility they have there now is like a few bleachers, like 1,000 seats maybe.
Yep.
So those were the options. And without, you know, an owner-operator driving it and trying to create other options or, you know, work through all the hurdles, it wasn't going to happen. You didn't have the right people pushing it. You know, the Georgia State Soccer Association wasn't as strong as they are now, and even now they're struggling because of different things that have affected the landscape. At that time, they were, you know, still very volunteer-driven and small. So they didn't have the staff to go out and lead a season ticket push. And that's what you needed. Columbus sold 11,000 season tickets. Atlanta sold reportedly around 1,600. So without an owner, without a obvious place to play, without the interest in buying the season tickets, Atlanta wasn't going to get MLS at the beginning. It was a city that was mentioned when expansion was being talked about, when moves were being talked about, but there wasn't anywhere to play. And honestly, at that time, and this is going into the late 90s, Charlotte was looked at as a more obvious MLS city than Atlanta, because the idea was that they could play at, it was Ericsson Stadium then, you know, now Bank of America, which is kind of funny because that's what's going to end up happening. Orlando was also mentioned with playing at the Citrus Bowl, which ended up happening. Atlanta was looked at as there's just nowhere to play. The Georgia Dome wasn't part of the conversation, and Tech didn't want to allow Bobby Dodd to be used. Now, Tech ultimately did allow Bobby Dodd to be used for the Atlanta Beat in 2001, but then they pushed back on that because they said it was tearing up the field.
Sure.
Yeah.
Bruh.
Yeah.
Bruh.
Anyway, so yeah, that's how it was. And it wasn't until 2008 that Arthur Blank got into the mix and then put in a bid at the end of the year, pulled it because of stadium issues, and some of that revolved around the Falcons. But that time allowed, one, the league to grow, and two, for Arthur to come around to the idea of building one mega stadium that would serve both purposes, but would have soccer front of mind, as opposed to building a smaller soccer stadium in Johns Creek or Kennesaw or Duluth or Lawrenceville, and then building the Falcon Stadium. I think it worked out pretty well.
I think so. Second Team Gaffer on Twitter this morning says, glad we waited on the right chance and right owner. As a former pro, most of Atlanta's teams would implode after one season.
Well, no, actually, that's not true. They usually got at least 3 or 4. But, by that point, you had the Ruckus, who limped through 4 years. The Silverbacks lasted a good while in 2 different phases, but, I mean, they lasted. They limped a lot.
They existed.
No, they existed. They played a professional schedule. It's just from 99 to 2008, they weren't very good for a lot of that, which is part of the problem, and they just never had the resources to get beyond where they were. And then when they came back in 2011 with support of Traffic Sports, who, as we know from our FIFA conversations, was at the heart of it, and people that were involved in bringing the Silverbacks back and helping with funding are not allowed to be in soccer activities anymore, but that's another whole topic. The 2011 to 2015 run, every year you thought it was going to go away. So it never had any staying power, but at least it lasted more than 1 year, Gaffer. I got to give it that. But if Atlanta had been in MLS in 96, if they had become one of those cities, they would have been the Tampa Bay Mutiny. Didn't have an owner, would have been run by the league, would have been second tier. You would have also been coming in at a time when the Braves ran the city, and the Falcons had their 1 year of massive success going to a Super Bowl, and it would have been tough. It would have been very tough. It would not have been successful, not at this level. If they had survived, let's say, okay, they're the Tampa Bay Mutiny, they are the league-owned team that gets in, because, the beginning of MLS, you had $5 million from the World Cup revenues, and you had, the idea was for $5 million each for 12 teams. That was what was going to fund the league. Well, you couldn't get 12 people, and you couldn't get 12 cities, so you ended up with 10, and you couldn't get 10 people. And the league almost didn't happen even after pushing it back a year. But you had, if I remember correctly, Philip Anschutz said, I'll put in an extra 5 for an option on a team in Chicago. And somebody else put in an extra 5 for an option on something else.
Didn't the Hunt family have multiple franchises?
Not at the beginning. No, I don't think it was like that at the beginning. So that was the idea, because you can't mix up the timelines because it's very important. And this is what, as I'm reading through stuff about the North American Soccer League, it's very hard because timelines and things have been lost over time. And it's mixed up and it's oversimplified, and it's not the reality. I think it's in one of the oral histories of MLS at the beginning. They were $10 million short, essentially. It could have been the Hunts. It could have been somebody else who ponied up an extra 5. But I know Anschutz was one who ponied up an extra 5. Now, later, the Hunts obviously had multiple teams. Anschutz had over half of the league. You had all kinds of stuff going on later on. But at the beginning, the idea was initially to have $60 million plus the 5, so 65 to start the league. And then it got down to 50 or 55, and you couldn't get there initially. So it was a mess. But you got it underway, and you got it started, and you found a way forward. And now, you have a league that is what MLS is. It's a huge league that has pushed soccer in this country forward. If you don't like the format, I understand it, but this is a situation where, man, if they hadn't gone through all of that, I don't know where soccer would be in this country.
Joey Logan asks, was there a bit in the early 2000s when the Atlanta Beat were in town? Vaguely remember something, and it was proposed at the Dome or Bobby Dodd.
Not in any real way, because you got to remember, MLS contracted 2 teams in 2001. They weren't looking to expand. I don't think Atlanta was mentioned at all with the 2005 expansion that ended up being Salt Lake and Chivas USA. It wasn't until 2008 that blank was first mentioned. I think there was reportedly a couple of other people that were sniffing around. I don't think it ever got further than that. I think it was people who didn't have the resources who were looking at different ideas. I think there was one idea about partnering with a Brazilian team and building a big complex and building a stadium. There was the Atlanta Soccer Village idea that Phil Woosnam was pushing, that Georgia Soccer was pushing, and I'm going to dig into that project that didn't happen here at some point. But I don't think there was anything in the early 2000s around the beat because the league wasn't in a position to look to expand. I'll have to go back and look. I mean, there could have been some ideas floated, but I don't think it was ever anything that got serious.
Thoughts outside of Soccer Files from this morning. Antinho on Twitter. Positive thoughts. With the addition of younger, speedier guys like Brooks, Walks, and Mulroney, does that make playing a more pressing style still at times more feasible, or is that not so much in FDB style?
You're not trying to press. You want to control the ball. Pressing comes down to a couple, like one key decision. To be a pressing team is you don't want possession. And Atlanta United has never been that team. Can you press? Yeah. And you'd like to be able to do that, sure. But you're not going to be a pressing team like the Red Bulls because you're not signing those kinds of players. You know, the idea of a team that plays that way is you can plug and play. It doesn't worry about what the name is on the back of the shirt. You're not trying to sign superstars. You can teach a guy to play that game. I don't think that's the idea here. Now, you need to know, and this is something that Frank de Boer's talked about quite a bit, you need to know when to press. Because a pressing team, that's all they do. That's how they play. Doesn't matter who the players are. You're going to get players that fit that style. That's it. What Atlanta United wants to be able to do is adjust to the match. And they have to know their times when to press, and that's coming from the front, and know when to drop off. So, who are the players that were specifically mentioned here?
Brooks, Walks, Mulroney.
Well, I mean, you're talking about wingbacks, and Walks potentially as a center back, which would not be part of the conversation when he's playing there. Your wingbacks are the ones who really have to understand that. You don't want them pressing. I'll walk you through why this team is not built to be a pressing team. If, let's say it's Mulroney on the left and Lennon on the right, and they're pressing up high, so basically you're creating a line of 5 pressing. If you don't win the ball, what do you have behind that? You have 3 midfielders, which are potentially involved in the pressing portion of this. Or 2 midfielders, sorry, because you have 2 central midfielders that have hung back, and 3 center backs. If you're pressing with 5 because the wingbacks are up high, you've got 3 center backs and 2 central midfielders to deal with whatever is coming at you. I don't like that at all. You've got to know when to see that a team is in trouble to press, but know when to drop off. That's what Frank de Boer's talked about a lot this season, is how you make those decisions. A lot of times you're pressed. Let's go back to Tata Martino, because everybody said that he pressed all the time. He didn't. He pressed less as his 2 seasons of Atlanta United went on. But he talked about it. When they played in a 3-5-2, they couldn't press as effectively. It was when they were in a 4-2-3-1/4-3-3 that they could press more because you had a line of 3 pressing. But it's 3 pressing. 7 behind. Not your wingbacks up high pressing and then everybody else behind. Like, it's hard to do. In a 4-3-3, it's a little bit easier to do it. A 3-5-2, you can't because it's 2. And generally, a team is going to have 4 in the back, and they're going to be able to play through that. 4v2, they should be able to handle it. You're asking your 2 to run themselves into the ground with low odds. So that's why, as Atlanta started to play more of that, they didn't press as much. You'd see individuals make decisions to chase, which is different. Miguel Almiron could make that decision because he's faster than anybody on the field. He might see an opportunity to jump and do it and get, when he would do it, then you'd see Joseph step up and do it. You might see somebody else step up and do it. Okay, that's a little bit different than a coordinated press. I don't think Atlanta's going to be a pressing team. I think they will be a team that can press. And the biggest time you see that in a 3-4-3 is not with the wingbacks, but it's with the 3 up front. In 3-4-2-1 is more of what it looks like. It's when Pitti and Barco step up with Joseph and press. Because if they don't win the ball, you've got cover. But if they do, they can go forward quickly. That's where the pressing for Atlanta will factor in. It won't be as much from the wingbacks.
Joe Johnston is in this morning, and he asks, if you were going to set up your own MLS team, what would be your tactical philosophy? Press, counterattacking, etc. I know in an ideal world you'd want to be tactically match fluid, but if you had to choose an identity, why and what would it be?
It would not be a pressing team because personally, I don't enjoy that as much, and I think you're looking for specific characteristics for it that are not related to the kinds of soccer players I like. I like guys who are talented with the ball at their feet. I want them to have the opportunity with the ball at their feet. Players in a pressing style, you're prioritizing stamina, you're prioritizing speed, you're prioritizing strength, ability on the ball. You got to have one or two of those, but that's not what you're building your team around. I'd love to have a team of midfielders. I'd love to have a team of, I say midfielders in the sense that guys who are all comfortable on the ball. I'd love to have a team of 10 players on the field and the goalkeeper included who are comfortable with the ball at their feet and can play. So a pressing style would be secondary. I'm with Frank in this regard. Like, when you recognize a team can't play out of the back, step up, put pressure on them. When you see a player who is struggling on the ball, press him, try to cause a turnover. And when you have numbers forward and you lose possession, then immediately try to win it back because you've got numbers there to try to win it back. That's not being a pressing team. So I want a team, and it's worked out. It's kind of funny how that happened. I mean, in terms of just the kind of styles that I like what Atlanta United has tried to do, both different elements of it, which I've said and I will continue to say, and we'll see if it becomes true. I don't think there's as much of a departure between the ideas behind what Tata Martino wanted to accomplish and Frank de Boer want to accomplish. I think they go about it in different ways, but both want, and Carlos Bocanegra has mentioned this many times, they want to control games. And in a perfect world, you have multiple ways to do that. I'm always going to lean to a team that wants the ball, wants to create dangerous opportunities with the ball, and something that I tweeted yesterday that Eric Winalda said, if you didn't get a chance to watch the 96 MLS Cup final that MLS did, go watch it. It's a fun watch. Like, sometimes when you have the remixes with people, watching along, people who played in the game, sometimes guys are very guarded, sometimes you don't get a whole lot of personality. Well, Eric's got personality for 5 people to begin with, and Bill Hamid's got personality for 10. So it was fun. Hamid reacting to stuff was hilarious, and Jeff Agus was great as well, providing his insight. But Winalda said that, one of the things that he doesn't like about the league, and he mentioned LAFC because he's had a chance to watch Bob Bradley's training sessions quite a bit, and I think Atlanta's in this situation as well. Eric wants players that don't turn away from a 1v1 situation. He wants players who are bold, confident, audacious enough to, any chance they have a 1v1, go for it. Go win the 1v1. You get a 1v1 with a defender, go take them. I don't care if you lose it. Go take them. You're going to win that more often than you're going to lose it. Go. And what he said is the league, you've seen a lot of teams that have players turn away from 1v1s and play the ball back and just keep possession and just recycle possession. When I say I like possession teams and teams that want the ball, I do. I want teams that want the ball. But it's all to set those 1v1s up. Because if it's just possession to just have the ball, there's times for that when you have a lead, when you're killing the clock, when you're overmatched in a certain way, or you're tired or whatever. Yeah, there's times to keep the ball and hold it and draw the opposition out. When the opponent is sitting deep and just packing numbers behind the ball, yeah, you want to play it back to your back line to make them come out and play a little bit. There's a time for it. But it's all to set up the best 1v1 opportunities you can. And you look at how Atlanta United's built. Pity Martinez thrives in those situations. You want him to take them. I never want him to not take a 1v1 opportunity to create a shot for himself or to create an opportunity for somebody else. Ezequiel Barco, same thing. Joseph, you know he's going to go every time he gets a chance. Brooks Lennon can be that kind of player. Mulroney, Bello can be that kind of player. You want those players. Emerson Hyndman has that in him. I think Mateus Josetu has that in him. We'll see about Manuel Castro. You want those guys, when you create the right 1v1 through your possession, to go for it and to not be afraid. And you want to create the platform that they can do that with because they know they're covered. Because you don't want to see that in the situation where, let's say, you've got your wingbacks up high, you're pinning the other team in, you go for a 1v1 in the middle of your attacking half, and you lose it to where then it's an odd number rush. You have to know when you have those times, but that's what your possession does. It sets up the 1v1s for your players that you want to take them. You want to set up Pitti, you want to set up Barco as much as possible to go 1v1 with a defender and smoke them. Because they're going to create a goal one way or another for themselves or for somebody else if you keep giving them those opportunities. That's the kind of game I like. You know, I like a game that's organized. I like a game that it has some structure to it, but also has structure to allow a Pitti, a Barco, you know, a Riquelme, a Maradona, you know, a Vela, because Vela, LAFC structure is set up to give him those opportunities. To have those players have those opportunities to impact the game. That's what you want to see. That's the kind of game I like. So luckily, that's what we're seeing here in Atlanta for the most part. And I think Frank is leaning into that in a big way, building on what Tata started and adding elements and adding a little more flexibility to where they can play in different shapes a little more comfortably. And you've seen maybe a little more priority on players who are comfortable with the ball at their feet and can play. And it's just continually, you know, evolving this idea of controlling games, but also having game-breaking players on the field and giving them the opportunity to do what they do.
Taka with a question this morning. If you could eliminate or rewrite any rule in soccer, which would it be? Off the top of my head, I'd eliminate indirect free kicks. Just do direct. Also, I'd increase the distance of opponent players from spot kicks to 12 yards just because.
Indirect free kicks, that's a good call. They're kind of stupid. They're just kind of dumb. You might have to rewrite the rules a little bit. Some stuff that turns into an indirect free kick. I don't know if it turns into something else or what, but I'm not opposed to that. I'm okay with 12 yards too. I mean, it's going to create more goals because you're going to give free kick takers more space to, you know, put the ball in the back of the net. So you're going to have more room to work with. So I'm okay with that. Other rules that I don't like that I would get rid of or change or what have you. I mean, there's stuff we've talked about in general. Like I'd find a hybrid between what the handball rule changed to and what it was before to give referees the ability to judge it a little bit more, because I think they've tried to take that away and it's just not realistic. So that's a tweak. That's not a big deal. I would keep observing the offside rule and VAR especially, because what I want to know is I think we always focus on the goals that VAR takes away. I want to know how many times an AR, and this is what we probably won't know, how many times would an AR have put their flag up incorrectly and taken away a goal? You know, I think back to the Women's World Cup. We saw multiple opportunities where that happened, where at the end of the play, the AR put their flag up, they delayed it to let it play out. There was a goal. They said there was an offside. You went back and looked at it. There wasn't an offside. How many times has VAR allowed a goal to stand because of the AR delaying the flag? I don't know if we'll ever get a true answer, but I'd like to have a good sense of it because, if it's a wash, then it's a wash. If there's goals that the AR would have allowed that are narrowly offside before because they couldn't have seen it with the naked eye, and they're taking those away. But if you're getting other goals that would have been taken away, then it's a wash. I kind of think that it is, but I don't know for sure. I don't know if the offside rule needs to change dramatically. I agree with a lot of the stuff that was said yesterday, but I want to be very specific about it. I don't like penalty shootouts. In games that have to have a winner, I would go to some version, and maybe you tweak it, maybe you modify it, I don't know, some version of the 35-yard shootout. It is a better way to decide a match. Penalties are not the way to decide a match, and I agree. At some point, you're going to have, something other than sudden death or golden goal or what have you. You're going to have to decide the match, and I would rather have a shootout situation. I think a lot of people always zero in, and Winalda talked about it yesterday. Winalda hates him. Agus loved him. Bill Hamid was kind of excited about trying it, but then he thought about, man, I might get hurt doing this. And that would be the concern. That's what a lot of people bring up. Winalda got hurt on a shootout attempt.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people have. It's not like it's a surprise. You're running full speed 35 yards out at a goalkeeper. It's going to happen. But is there a way to make that idea safer? And that would be something I'd like to see them explore. But I think it's more tweaks than big rule changes that need to happen. I think the game is pretty well structured, but there are some things that can make it better. That offside thing is what I keep coming back to, because my gut is that VAR hasn't dramatically changed it. It's kind of like the 2-0 score line's most dangerous. You think of the times that VAR took a goal away. You don't think of the times that VAR allowed a goal to stand.
Yeah.
That would have been taken away before. And I don't know. And I'd have to go back, and I don't know if it's even possible to change, because now you're going to see, instead of an AR even putting their flag up quickly like they had to before, you're going to see them have time to kind of think about it. And they might not even put their flag up because it's going to get reviewed anyway. So you don't know, would they have put their flag up without VAR, or did they not put it up? Are they on the headset with the referee and say, man, I think that might have been offside, take a look at it, and not put their flag up at all? So then we don't know if they would have. That's the part that's hard. That's the part we'll never truly know.
Chris Hutchison and Tofka went down our road when we were discussing what was going on with the indictment handed down. Chris Hutchison says there's a lot more shoes fixing to drop from that FIFA millipede.
Oh, yeah. I think so, anyway. I don't know in what way exactly. That's the part that, I understand that there's probably a lot more that we don't know. But are we going to find out? Because, some of the people that were involved in it are no longer with us. And others have already been banned, indicted, whatever. So are you actually going to get the truth? I don't know.
Are folks going to be extradited who have been fighting extradition?
Potentially, but what is Jack Warner going to tell us that we don't already know?
Yeah.
That's
unless he names other names and actually has proof of stuff that is only just alleged.
I don't think he does. I don't think he's a ringleader behind it. I think he was a recipient of a lot of it.
Yeah.
I think the only things that you would get that would take it to another level would be if Sepp Blatter starts talking, because he knows what's been going on. If you're getting like a FIFA head talking about it, then they know.
Yeah.
Jack Warner doesn't know that much. I don't know. There will be more, because there always is, but is it going to change anything? Is it going to change anything about a World Cup being awarded? Is it going to change anything about how something happens? That I don't know, and that I'm kind of skeptical that it does. But will other people get named? Will other things come out from this? Yeah, there's plenty more to tell.
Yep. Tofka says, just tell Qatar that they'll be required to pay restitution for their nefarious behavior. $10 million charitable donation to every nation qualifying for the 2022 World Cup to be distributed to soccer-based charities in each nation. Failure to do so will result in Qatar being excluded from all FIFA operations until restitution is satisfied.
it's making the best of a bad situation. I mean, but it's also, criminal money, if you want to put it that way, because it's being used to back up a criminal enterprise that got the World Cup. Not even getting into the other things that are human rights violations and all that. I'm talking about just how they got the World Cup.
Right.
It's basically allowing them to put more bribes down. And yeah, it would benefit things. It would. But it's a dangerous precedent. It might be one of the only ways to try to make this feel less dirty. I don't know. I don't know. One thing about that is completely separate from Qatar. The 2010 process, the U.S. bid at that time, was very different than the bid for 26 that was awarded last year. The bid before, because I was at Soccer in the Streets at the time, there was a concerted effort nationally and with the local bid committees, because you had local bid committees that were involved. There was a concerted effort in terms of the World Cup leaving a legacy and money from the World Cup being used for these types of organizations. It was in 94. In 94, the World Cup ended up launching the U.S. Soccer Foundation. Well, the next one, and remember, the U.S. Soccer Foundation is one of the people who has a lawsuit out with the U.S. Soccer Federation. One of the reasons why was the next World Cup bid, the one for 26, Soccer for Social Change, these types of nonprofits were really not part of the conversation at all. It was up front in the bid in 2010 that would have brought the World Cup in 22, that the World Cup would have done certain things in different cities. I don't think details were really there yet, but it was part of the conversation. Now it's not, and there has not been those conversations. At least not in any organized way. You've seen some different things pop up in different markets, but the whole process was different. It was very top-down as opposed to local committees like it was before. One of the reasons why U.S. Soccer Foundation filed a lawsuit with the Federation was I don't know if it's a threat, I don't know exactly how it was handled, that the Federation would create a new foundation to handle soccer, grassroots soccer support coming out of the next World Cup that's going to be in the United States, as opposed to working with the one that's already there. Now, over the years, there's been a lot of disputes and back and forth between the foundation and the Federation. They have not always been in alignment. They are not part of the same organization. I think people have confused that. One reason why is the logo. Now, U.S. Soccer has a different badge, and the U.S. Soccer Foundation logo is the old U.S. with the soccer ball going through. It does look different now. Before it didn't. It's a mess in that you're going to have a World Cup here that is going to bring a lot of money, but leaving a legacy in communities that are going to host it and the rest of the country hasn't been front of mind at all. And I hope that changes, because this World Cup has the potential to be transformative if it's done correctly, and if growing the game at the grassroots level is something that is done intentionally as opposed to happening by accident. I hope that they get that right. I know that the bid before did. It at least had it front of mind. Now it's not, and I hope that changes.
Tafka says that the second half of his thought is that FIFA should then match each donation, since FIFA is just as guilty as Qatar. His real plan is to make sure Soccer in the Streets has a station pitch for every desired location.
Yeah, well, I mean, but that's the thing, is it's not just Soccer in the Streets. It's in Atlanta. It's in Atlanta, not just Soccer in the Streets. I mean, Atlanta United does a lot of things with their foundation outside of what Soccer in the Streets does. You have the Fuji's family, who you support and others support in big ways. You have organizations that support Top Soccer for disabled youth and adults. You have a variety of ways that Soccer for Social Change, and that's kind of the broad description of it. you have a variety of ways that it's done. It can revolve around building employment skills. It can revolve around battling childhood obesity. It can revolve around just giving kids the opportunity to play who couldn't afford it previously. In Africa, it's used as a way to educate about infectious diseases. Grassroots soccer. Ethan Zahn, who was on Survivor, started it, and they've done amazing work in AIDS education using soccer to do that. Soccer can be used for social good in a lot of different ways. Soccer in the streets affects one way. There's so many different groups around the country in the different cities that'll host World Cup games that can do that, let alone in communities that aren't going to host World Cup games. That's what this World Cup can do, and having some kind of understanding of how you're going to accomplish that at the federation level is critical. Is it going to go into kind of like what the foundation did when it initially started? Now, it's changed a little bit over the years to where it is delivering, for the most part, not completely, but delivering a programming apparatus. Whereas when it launched, it was basically a fund, and if you had a soccer organization that needed support, whether it was paying registration fees for kids who can't afford it, whether it was building a facility in a community that didn't have one, you would make a proposal and they would make a decision, yes or no, and how much they could give you. If you're going to have something like that, that's a blanket that can serve any kind of organization, okay. But you have to create the apparatus to do that. And that's what the Federation, the World Cup Committee, FIFA, all have to do this the right way. Because it's not just one kind of way of doing it. What Soccer in the Streets does is great. What Fuji's does is great. And they do very different things. Very, very different things. And that's just the tip of the iceberg compared to other organizations that do things in their own ways and do great work and have a great impact on their communities. So, in an ideal world, this World Cup would help support all of those different things and help grow the game. But right now, I don't think there's much of an organized way of that happening, and I hope that changes.
Getting into rule changes that were proposed this morning, Chris Levine says daylight between the offensive player and the last defender has to be offsides. No more his big toe was ahead bogus calls.
The big toe was ahead thing is only known now because of VAR. Before, it was a guess by the AR. So, it was always there. That's my pushback on that idea that like now it's something new. It was always there, and you saw ARs get it right and you saw ARs get it wrong. Like it was a guessing game because you couldn't see it. Now you can see it. Wherever you set the line, there's going to be a line. If it's daylight, that would be saying that if there is. Let me try to put this into a written law type of language. So there has to be space between the attacker and the last defender. So if the attacker is completely clear of the last defender, then they would be offside. So one, that's giving a lot more room to be onside, right? If I'm reading that correctly. If there is... So the way you would write that is that would change it to one thing that we've talked about. If there is any part play, and the way this is being said is it's just any part, period. Not even playing body, not body part that can play the ball. So arm wouldn't factor in. The way this is said in the tweet, the way I would write it would be if there is any part of the attacker's body that is even with the last defender, it is onside, right?
Yeah. Yes.
If there is no part of the attacking player's body that is even with the last defender, then they would be offside. And with the way it's written with space, then you got to define space, unless you're just going to leave it at that. Because then all you've done is change the line. If the line you don't want it to be a big toe is offside, then it would be a big toe could keep you onside. Is that what you want? If there is space, then how much space? And you've got to define it. And that's going to be really hard to do. because you've got leagues and competitions that use the laws of the game that don't have VAR. You've got youth leagues that won't have VAR. So how do you define it for them, or are you going to create different sets of rules, which is something IFAB and FIFA do not want to do? I don't know. There's not an easy solution here. You know, the thing about a big toe or a toenail or an armpit, as the English medias want to said so much, that was always there. It's just now you can actually see that what it is, as opposed to guessing about what it was and getting it wrong sometimes. Now you're going to get it right. Based off the way the law is written, you are going to get it right. That's what VAR has allowed you to do. If you don't like how the law is written, then you have to define it in a way that can work for all of the game, not just for the elite level that has VAR. And that's not an easy process. It's not quite as simple as space between the attacker and the defender. You've got to define it for a law of the game. And that's going to be tough.
Tafka says he agrees in theory, but the 1-inch call just becomes as there daylight between the two players. He wants coordinated GPS tags clipped into the neck of jerseys. Tech could solve this problem if we tried.
Well, tech's solving the problem as it is. I think a lot of people are going down the conspiracy theory route that, you know, well, it's the technology's not good enough. The technology is better than naked eye. I mean, let's be absolutely real about this. This idea about, you know, oh, well, it's not calibrated and there's a margin for error. That margin for error is a whole lot better than taking VAR out of the equation and telling the AR to put their flag up based off what they see. How many times did you get mad before about an offside call, whichever way, watching it live? Every single game, 5 times a game, at least. Uh-huh. So now, it's right. For the most part, are there situations? Let's follow this down a second. So before you're following the naked eye, it is a guessing game for the AR. Some of them are very, very good at it. Some of them struggle with it. You'd have bad calls. You'd have good calls. It was all over the place. Now you're seeing it and you're mapping it because the Hawkeye system is not just a camera. Like there's actual mapping going on, maybe not to the GPS point that Tafka's talking about, but mapping. And I don't know the technology of the GPS, if that would solve all of it. If it would, I would think they would have already explored it, because you're already getting GPS situations now with, you know, sports science. That would be something to test. But let's go from what it was before to what it is now with the Hawkeye situations. Not the MLS situation, the Hawkeye situations. Is there a margin for error? Sure. Any technology is going to have a margin for error. The GPS systems would. Everything's going to have some margin for error. Is it better than the naked eye? Yeah. 100%. So you're getting more calls correct now. Are you still missing some because of that margin for error? Perhaps. I don't know how many. It's a pretty small margin for error. But you're getting calls right. The problem, the thing that people don't like, is they don't like how it feels. Based off the way the law is written, you are getting calls right. Far more often than not. But you don't like what it feels like, because the idea before was that even was on, even though it wasn't. The law of the game was written the way it was written. The way the even is on thing was said basically to give the ARs the benefit of the doubt, because you can't see everything in live action. It was, if you have a question, then keep your flag down. That was what even is on meant. It wasn't in the laws. So now you're getting the calls right, but people don't like how it feels. So do you change it to go to the way people feel like it should have been called or it was being called before? If you can define it, you've got to do that and try it. I don't know if changing it to, you know, the whole thing about any part of the body being even with the defender keeps the player onside. I don't know if that dramatically changes it. It moves the line, so you're still going to have questions about calls. That part's for sure. But would it feel better? That's the part I don't know. I don't know if it would change it too far the other way, if you'd see too many goals, if it would change the way teams defend, if it would have a negative effect. I don't know. But That's the issue. It's not about not calling it based off the laws of the game. It's about the feel of it. People don't like how it feels right now.
And then Chris and Tafka go into their other previous ideas. Chris says the average distance of a pacer step is 2.5 feet. It takes 12 paces, therefore, to make 10 yards. Make the refs take 12 paces for PKs and not 10, as it seems to often be done.
I'm okay with that. I'm not against it. It would create more goals. I mean, not a ton, but it would get you more goals from free kicks because it's going to give people more room to work with. I'm not against that. I like goals. I like attacking play, so I'm down for that. That's an easy change. It's easy to implement. It's not going to create any issues with making that happen. So yeah, it could be done.
And Tafka says that he got a double agreement from you on hypothetical rule changes, and then followed that up with 6 emojis, 3 with, I guess, a shock face, and 3 with grins.
I'm losing my touch in quarantine, so that's what happens.
And then Tafka comes out and says, what about a 3-on-3 inside the 18 back and forth until you have a winner like college football, start at the 25 and play till no longer tied?
That would be madness. I don't think there's a way to do that to make it work, because this is where you've got to try to think about doing it in different kinds of competitions and different kinds of situations. Like, you're not going to move one of the goals up to the halfway line and shorten the field or something, or do like half field soccer. You clear the 18 and then the play's dead. I don't think you could make that work. I don't think you could actually pull off an offense-defense type of situation with a soccer tiebreaker to make it work universally. So it's interesting to come up with these ideas. I think the 35-yard shootout or some variation of it is better than penalties. I don't know if there's something better out there.
Yeah. El Mataflow is in this morning. And he says he totally agrees with you here on using possession to create favorable matchups and unbalances. Good point about coverage. I recently got nostalgic with Valderrama and watched highlights from the 98 All-Star game, and the 1v1 capability of the world side was incredible, but the lack of coverage was glaring. In contrast, Team USA was excellent in their spine and winning the ball back and going forward quickly.
Yeah, it's funny about how people look at American soccer players and what they think of it. A lot of people will try to tell you that American players and teams, they because it's not, you don't have the same soccer culture, that they don't, the tactics aren't as strong and this and that. That's not the issue. I think the tactics, you can learn tactics. You can learn how to defend. You can learn tactics. You can work through it. You can be organized. American teams have generally been pretty organized. It's those special moments, those 1v1 moments. Those are things that we haven't seen American players develop enough, because you have a lot of coaches who go the other way. And this is one reason why I'm not a big fan of a pressing team, because it's such a rigid tactical system. There's not room for creativity. There's not room for players to be, exceptional individually, because you have to be part of the group tactic. If you're not, then you don't fit, because one person can have it all break down. I love special players. Maybe it's because Maradona was the first player that grabbed my attention. I don't know, but I love those kinds of players. I love a system that has organization but allows those special players to be themselves and impact a game. So I like to find both. I think at times we've had too many players in the United States develop in a robotic sense. It is, skill. Like at the younger ages, you're doing all the skill work. You can juggle a certain number of times. You can do all the tricks, by yourself. But can you do it in a game? Do you know when to use that trick? Do you know when you don't have a trick that you learned and you've got to find your way out of a problem? You're boxed into the corner and you've got to go find a goal because your team is losing and you're about to be knocked out of the tournament. What do you do? Those are the kinds of things where the cream rises to the top. American players haven't generally been able to do that enough. And I want to see more coaches have styles of play, systems of play, and encourage young players, because that's where it starts, to take those chances. That's been, and I think you've heard me enough talk about Pitti and Barco and those kinds of players. That's my frustration with this thing, that it's bad that they take a shot from distance, or it's bad that they try to dribble past this player, or it's bad that they try to make a amazing pass that not many people see. Those things aren't bad. There's times and places. There's times, and this has come up with Pitti, I think, early in last season more than late. There were times where you can't risk that because you're in a dangerous part of the field. You can't be too risky in the middle of the field in the build-up because you can get exposed very quickly. But in the final third, it's your game. Pep Guardiola talked about it, and it's something that it's a really good way to define, I think, what I like about it, the game, and what I'd like to see. You have to be organized in your defensive third. If you do everything there and you build up play properly, you can then get into the middle third. In the final third, in the attacking third, that's the players' game. And especially like the players you're talking about, the guys who are great 1v1, the guys who are bold and will try stuff, and that's their game. But you have to build it properly to get there, to give them that opportunity. If they do that too quick, you can get exposed. If you do that in the middle of the field, you can get caught out. If you build up your game properly, and that's why possession is important, and that's why passing to build up play and get people forward is very important, because it gives you structure. Final third, be as creative as you want, try as much stuff as you want. I don't care about position. If you're a right winger and you end up on the left, fine. If that's where the game takes you, fine. It's not about structure in the final third. It's about creativity. The rest of the field, yeah, you got to have more structure.
KFC this morning is grinning from the mention of Riquelme and enjoyed the first game watch-along. Hamid, Lalas, and Carr asking questions made it clear guys love the opportunity to ask questions they had about the league's start and direction. KFC wanted to know, did you watch the Mud Bowl after? Lots of Kali Teal used.
No. What after? I'm sorry.
Did you watch the Mud Bowl after?
Which Mud Bowl?
What I don't know. That's a KFC question. It's like I don't know what Mud Bowl KFC is referring to.
Nope. I'm assuming the MLS Cup '96. I watched some of that on ESPN. That was the original broadcast, so that's a little different. That was fun. I mean, I remember that game very clearly. That was a crazy, strange game. Shouldn't have been played, but you had a national TV window to get a game in, and it's your first final, and you got to play it. And somehow the drama of the occasion, rose above the awful quality of the field, and it was a compelling game to watch because of all that. It was crazy. I've enjoyed these look backs and watch alongs with the right people, because it's different than a broadcast. It's you're able to go off on a tangent. You're able to ask a question and start spinning it down different things. It can be really interesting, create some really interesting conversation. The one yesterday with Hamid, being a kid when that happened and reacting, like one of the funniest things was Bill Hamid reacting to the tackles that were not even getting yellow cards early in that first MLS game. Because now, there'd have been yellows and people seeing a second yellow and being tossed quickly. Then, when Alda's like, we just got up. Like, you got hit, we just got up. Because that was allowed back then. That was how the game was played. Now it's different. So, like, his reaction to that was really funny.
Chris Hutchison says if MLS starts back up by playing without crowds, will they be playing with quarantine teams?
Wow.
I
like it. Wow.
Yep.
That's Chris Hutchison.
Boom shakalaka!
Yes, you win.
And Tafka continuing to go down his alternate game decision thread says each attempt goes until a loss of possession or ball leaves the 18, back and forth till you have a winner. Threw it out there on a win, but the more I think about it, the more I don't hate it.
I have to test it. I have to see how that could work. I'm going to go with no. It's too gimmicky off the top of my head, but I wouldn't mind seeing it examined and tested a little bit.
A couple of developing story, breaking news kind of things.
Okay.
Let's see. Which one do you want first?
I don't know what they are, so you're just going to have to pick one and go.
Well, developing story is Alexander Ceferin, the president of UEFA, has said there's no way, and the president means no way, Liverpool will be denied the opportunity to win the Premier League title this season despite coronavirus pandemic. He told the Slovenian sports daily Equipa, I see no way for Liverpool to stay untitled. If the championship presumes they will almost certainly win it theoretically, it has not yet reached the guaranteed level, but it is practically close. However, if it could not be played, it would also be necessary to announce the results in some way and find some key on how the champions should be determined. And of course, again, I do not see a scenario in which that would not be Liverpool. I understand that fans will be disappointed if it happens in an empty stadium or even at the green table, but I believe they will win the title one way or another.
Okay. I mean, I agree. I don't know about interviews with, what was the Slovenian outlet called?
Equipa.
Okay. I don't know how strong of a news source they are, but okay.
And word out of Nashville, the official release coming down about an hour ago, they have now introduced their TV broadcast talent for when the season resumes, for their inaugural MLS soccer campaign. Tony Husband will take on play-by-play duties with Jamie Watson on color Lori Lindsay as the sideline analyst when the team returns to action. So Husband joins Nashville after spending 2 decades with the BBC, and this is from the release, covering soccer's biggest competitions and leagues, some of BBC Sports programs, major events including the Olympics, FA Cup Final, Champions League Football, World Athletics Series, and Wimbledon. He joined the ranks of BBC Match of the Day in 2013, part of the Final Score crew on BBC One, presented every night across the south of England on South Today on BBC One. Deep connection with American sports as he's hosted NFL and Major League Baseball for the BBC network on the radio side.
Okay, and we don't know where their TV will be.
Not at the moment. That has not been released. Nashville City announced in February the radio talent is friend of the network John Freeman, Wes Bowling, and Kelly Glendenning as the primary voices of action on the airwaves in English.
Okay, well, we'll see where the TV ends up being broadcast on. Miami's in the same situation. They've announced people, but not the partner of where it will be broadcast just yet.
So those were the last two ideas that came across both of my mobile devices here in Office HD this morning, and I will save my question for Interiores till next Tuesday.
Okay. What? Interiores?
Yeah, that was it was something when I was reading up on Pep Guardiola about the importance of midfielders that were referred to as interiores, and I just wanted to see if there was an idea of who might be some of the best described as interiores in Major League Soccer.
Well, you're going to have to give a little more information because it's not a common term, and I'm wondering if it's a translated thing as opposed to, it's not like a trequartista or a position that has been, defined in the game. I'm assuming that's central midfielders.
It is.
Okay.
Let's see. From the 442 article, in Catalonia, it was Xavi and Iniesta. In Bavaria, Arjen Robben and Frank Ribery. The first two are classic Spanish interiores, central midfielders who operate in the channel between fullback and center back and load the messy bullets. In contrast, Robben and Ribery are wingers who cut inside to occupy the interior space. In Germany, they call it the Halbraum, or half spaces.
Yeah, we'll talk about it probably this week as we go. I don't think we have to wait until next Tuesday, but it's not exactly a position. It's more of a way that a player plays. Because, I mean, a central midfielder is a central midfielder, but you are trying to exploit certain parts of the field with different kinds of players, and that's the difference between a Xavi and an Iniesta. So, like, you could say that a team has, central midfielders that could do that, but do they play in that way? That's the question, and that teams that play like a double pivot of two defensive midfielders don't really look to do that in the same way unless their wingers tuck in and it becomes a very narrow setup. So some teams don't play in that way. We'll have to talk about who in MLS could fit into that, and who plays in that kind of way. I mean, what Atlanta doesn't really lend itself to that either, unless you want to include a Barco and a Pitti in that conversation, because they play kind of a variation of it, but further up the field because they're tucked in. They're not wide wingers in a 3-4-3. They're tucked in behind the forward. So we'll get into that. It is more of a mentality than a position exactly, because defensively, like, they've got to do the role of the central midfielder. So they've got to revert to position defensively, but in the attack, you're trying to exploit something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that was why I wanted to, because like I said, reading up on Guardiola, as I do when we're discussing tactics, it seems to be a point of focus for me, considering my viewing habits of the Premier League and just wanting to see how someone like that formulates ideas and things, and just in noticing that about interiores, and that kind of an idea was why it came to my mind on a Tuesday.
Yeah, it's more mentality than position, but we can get into that too. All right, that's going to do it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll have Mike Conti on with us at 10 o'clock, potentially some other special guests as well, working on some interviews for today. So we will potentially have some extra stuff for you tomorrow on the show. We'll have a watch-along on Thursday evening as well, game TBD. I want to come up with something a little interesting. So I'll see what I can find and see what we can come up with. So we will go from there. I want to find something that John doesn't get sidetracked with, signboards and production techniques, and actually gets a little more focused on interiores and trequartistas and all kinds of things.
Good luck on that.
Yeah, well, you probably should, because it's the game, not the shiny things on the side. It's a little more important.
Sport Billy and Opal.
Yeah, I'm going to get you there eventually. All right, we will figure all that out as we go, but we'll be back in the morning. Thanks, y'all, for listening. Thanks for all the interaction this morning on Twitter. Thanks for checking out the Soccer Files as well. We'll have more of that, too. So, mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.